Welcome to the Literature Lounge, where writers and authors share their stories behind their stories.
I was being chased by this real monstrous rhinoceros-like creature, and it was huge. It had two or three horns and everything, and it was chasing me, chasing me, chasing me. And at one point, I felt that, I was running and I was coming to the edge of a cliff, and I knew that there was no going forward. And that was the point I felt this is the end. Like, yeah, and I turned around, I see this thing charging towards me. If you look at Hindu epics, Puranas, then Dakini is an attendant of Kali, of Durga. And even if you don't look at the Hindu or the Brahminical Puranas, you go to the Tibetan mythology. If you go there in Buddhism, again, Dakini is a very powerful entity. She is raw. She is vicious. She's covered in blood. She drinks from a cup of skull. But she is also untamed wisdom.
Oh, that's such a beautiful line, Hari. Untamed wisdom. My goodness, this will stay back with me from this podcast.
If you've written a book and you plan to pitch it as a web series, then keep these things ready. And if you can't make it, get professional help.
Hi, in today's episode, we have with us K Hari Kumar, one of India's leading horror voices in horror fiction, known for blending folklore, mythology, and psychological suspense into chilling tales that haunt long after the last page. The best-selling author of India's most haunted, Dakhma and Dakini, Hari's work explores the dark undercurrents of belief, trauma, and the supernatural in deeply rooted Indian context. A screenwriter and filmmaker as well, his novel The Other Side of Her was adapted into the web series Brahm, whether drawing from ancestral legends of nightmarish dreams, K. Hari Kumar writes from the shadows where truth, terror, and storytelling collide. And I'm already getting absolutely fascinated with this. We've grown up with stories like this, Hari, and then now when you tell these tales to young children, they kind of really scoff at you because there's such a, I think these kind of stories are probably dying, over time, that has been passed on from your grandmother, and your mother, and that this kind of storytelling. So it's extremely interesting that I've got you today in on our podcast. So you've often said your dreams aren't just dreams, okay? They feel like messages. So I would love to know more about this. And what's that one dream that really shook you? The one that felt like a warning and then it came true.
So I always believe that dreams have some kind of a message or some kind of something, which is leading you to somewhere. Okay. And of course, there's no proof that it's true or not. A lot of people say, dreams have meanings. Some people say it's just fragments of, figments of your memories and imagination and everything colliding and the brain showing you things. But as a writer, I think I'd like to believe the first explanation that the dreams may have some meanings. And in my case, even as a child, I've had some vivid dreams in the sense like, since you mentioned about grandmothers and, the stories that dadis and nanis tell their children. I
Yeah.
was brought up in Delhi and I come from a South Indian family. So for me, every year, the summer vacations was the time when I would go back to my hometown in Kerala. And that's where I would, and it's a small village, okay? And I'm
Yes.
talking about Kerala from 25 years ago.
Mhm.
And my grandmothers used to, both of them, the paternal and the maternal ones, they used to tell me these stories about all these supernatural beings. And, then there was also these magazines, these children's magazines like Chanda Mama that my
Mhm.
mother used to read.
Yeah.
And even those had these tales of Vikram Vetal, and
Yeah.
it had this. I
We've
still
grown
remember that,
up on Vikram Betal.
Vikram Vetal, and it had
Yeah.
this beautiful picture in that magazine where Vikram is carrying this Vetal on his shoulder, and there are
Yes.
cobras slithering around. There's a skull somewhere. There's a moon. So this formed a lot of images in my mind. And
Yes.
growing up, I used to get these dreams of all these things, and I think that's where I started finding this call towards horror. And
Okay.
eventually, as I grew up, things changed. I was exposed to uh, international horror and science fiction. That's where the whole alien and all those extraterrestrials, UFOs, and all those things started pouring into my head. And then my dreams started taking a different route altogether. And then, of course, growing up, you face the actual challenges of life, the real horrors of life, and the dreams
True.
really took a different turn. So now,
We became horrors
yeah, life
for
itself
me.
becomes a horror. So
Yeah.
that's when you actually realize, that life, it has no, whether it has a purpose or not, it is an actual horror. So anyway, coming back to the point, so I always took these dreams as signs, like, for example, one of the dreams which really shook me, that's what you had asked me. One of the dreams that really shook me was, I think this was like 5 or 6 years back. I don't remember exactly, but I had this dream that I was being chased by this real monstrous rhinoceros-like creature, and it was huge. It had 2 or 3 horns and everything, and it was chasing me, chasing me, chasing me. And at one point, I felt that, I was running and I was coming to the edge of a cliff, and I knew that there was no going forward. And that was the point I felt this is the end. Like, yeah, and I turned around, I see this thing charging towards me. And I can remember it because this was that kind of a dream where
Yeah.
you started questioning about existence. You're like, okay. And in a dream, you don't realize it's a dream, right? Most of the time, you don't. So I was like, I was in reality and I am going to experience the end of life, death. And then I just closed my eyes. I let the thing, hit me. But then what happened was very interesting. I woke up. So that is the first time I started thinking, what if, it is possible that we are all living in a dream of somebody else, and then, or maybe ourselves, and when they wake up, we are all gone. So I think that dream really shook me, and then I started questioning existence itself. And if you look at my works, especially after that period, so India's Most Haunted, Dakhma, Dakini, and even Daiva for that matter. Daiva is a work of non-fiction, but even there, I actually question existence. It's an inquiry into existence. What is existence? So yeah. So and there are other dreams as well. Like my first book, it was inspired by a dream I had. So again, I'll take you back to my childhood. I had visited Taj Mahal and I'd gone with a relative of mine and was very tired. It was on a summer afternoon when I visited there. And on the way back to Gurgaon, that's where I was living, uh, I was very tired and I was, sleeping in between. And I was getting some weird dreams of big pillars and trains running over those pillars. And it was all Gurgaon. And and there was some tea seller and a little boy selling tea to people. But at that time, there was no metro in Gurgaon. Okay. So eventually, I think 15 years later, when the metro and all came about, and suddenly I realized I had a similar dream. Okay. And maybe I'd seen those metro bridges in some movies that is based in New York or something. I don't know. But whatever happened, I thought about that dream. And then I thought about the child who was selling tea under the metro bridge. And then I wrote a story, and it became my first book. So it's always been dreams. Dreams have always inspired me to write. Every book that I write, if it's fiction, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, there will be something about dreams and inquiry into existence.
Wonderful, amazing. I've had a very bizarre dream in Delhi. I also grew up
Mm.
in Delhi. And
Okay.
yeah, and this whole dream was I was in this hotel room and I was
Uh,
visiting Delhi at that time.
mm.
And there was this man who had walked up, into the room, and there were more people coming in, and I couldn't get up from my bed. And oh my God, that was so crazy that when I woke up, I looked all around me and I realized that I wasn't dead. And this was just a dream. And I think from then on, I've always kind of locked doors and, I can never forget that dream, ever. It was so real, that even now when I talk about it, I can feel it and I can see the person, wearing a white shirt and he was walking and there were more people and only men walking into that room. And your hands and your legs, they've become so like they're tied down and you're not being able to get up, so yeah, that was quite a, something that now when I look back, it was, I think, one of my most frightening dreams that I can recall even now with absolute clarity. So
Clarity.
yeah, yeah, and it really, it really tormented me, after that, Hari. Like it still stays on right now when I'm talking to you. I can travel back to that place. Of course, the horror of that moment lasted me that entire day, which has never happened to me ever, you know?
See, the fact that you still remember that dream itself means that it's deeply embedded in your psyche. Because you don't
Yeah.
remember dreams most of the time. It's only the
Yeah,
last
you
few
don't.
moments of the dream which you remember when you wake up. And you forget that within the next 2 days if you're not thinking about
Hmm.
it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if it's something, it could be some.
So, you grew up listening to stories of Yakshis, Pichashi, Dakinis from your grandmom. And when did those bedtime tales start feeling a little too real? So do you remember the first time a story followed you into real life?
So, I want to clarify here that my grandmothers did not scare me to sleep. Okay. It was
Hmm.
not like they were telling me stories about blood-sucking vampires or anything. It was just I was fascinated by these stories. So
I
in
think all
Kerala,
grandmothers, Hari, they all
they
share
do.
with you.
But
They share, yeah.
there's an intention behind that. It's to, you know, all these stories carry some kind of a moral.
Hmm.
It's just to, keep children, disciplined or whatever it
Yes,
is. But
yes,
in my case, so I'll tell you why the concept of Yakshi comes here. In Kerala, one of the most popular supernatural entities, like in the north, you've got Chudel, right?
yeah, true.
You've got Rakshas, or you've got Shakchunis
Bengal.
in the Bengal. Yeah, I think there's this. What was that? Jholer something is there in Bengal.
Yeah, there are lots of ghosts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you've got those things. So in Kerala, it's mostly Yakshis who are very famous. And Yakshis actually derived from the word Yakshinis, and Yakshinis are a completely different concept altogether. But when you say Yakshi in Kerala, you're actually referring to a blood-sucking vampire. Unfortunately, that's how pop culture has really defined it in literature and in drama and movies. If you pick up any Malayalam movie of a Yakshi, you'll see a woman in white sari with flowing hair and with teeth protruding out and drinking the blood of men. Objectified, to be very honest. Uh, but coming back to the stories of my grandmother, so she would tell me these stories. Tell me about the story of a Yakshi that haunted the forest behind our house. A Yakshi that my great great grandfather had encountered while he was coming back from a temple festivity. So, all these stories, like I said, they painted these very beautiful pictures from an era which I was never part of, right? And what happened once was I had written this book called India's Most Haunted. And the first story in India's Most Haunted is based on one of these Yakshi stories that my grandmother had narrated. And it involved my some great grandfather or somebody. And I had put that story there and told my grandmother. And she was very old at that time. She was like 85, just a couple of years before she passed away. And I told her, see, the story you told, that's the first story in India's Most Haunted. And it's a Yakshi story. And she was like, no, 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 Hari, you should never write about Yakshis. So never talk about Yakshis. Even if you utter their name, they get invoked, and then they'll surround you. And then I was talking about this. Now, this is the funny incident. Okay. Now, just like you have asked me, I was on another podcast, and this was a live recording in a studio in Bombay, in Mumbai, and the podcaster, huge name, I'm not going to take the name here, but he asked me about the same question, the Yakshis and all these supernatural entities. These are negative entities. And, when you talk about them or you write about them, don't they haunt you? And I told him the same thing. This is what my grandmother told me. And immediately the electricity just went off. All the lights were off, all the devices were off. And suddenly there was this environment where everyone was silent and looking at each other. Oh my God, did we just invoke a Yakshi? So something like this has happened. And obviously it was an electricity, some meter had tripped. I don't know what happened. But yeah, such incidents have happened. But the thing is, Mahua, I want to be very clear here. When I write about these supernatural entities, I don't write them as negative entities. I want to clarify it here. They are not negative entities. Unfortunately, our folk tales and our pop culture, especially movies, they portray these women as negative entities or whatever they are, sucking blood of men. But no, they're not. They have become that because they have been wronged at some point of time in their lives. And now they are coming back. It's a way of showing female rage, and that's exactly what my stories are all about. Even if you look at Brahm, the web series, even if you look at Dakini, the recent book, it all depicts the female rage. And no, my Yakshis and Dakinis, they're not negative. Even if I summon, I mean, let's assume that they are there. I mean, I'm not saying they're there. Even if they are there, I don't think they'll harm anybody. They are there to protect if you seek protection. Yeah.
It's so fascinating to talk to you, Hari, because you're the first human being I've met who's turned, their fear into a purpose. And that isn't easy, right? To become a storyteller where it's fear, right? When you're a child, you are scared of hearing all these stories. So, was there any specific incident, something paranormal, maybe that you knew that maybe that horror was your calling
Uh, I think I already
as a
told you.
genre?
No, I think I already told you that it was a fascination which pulled me towards
Okay.
horror more than any incident. Incidents, there have been incidents like once I remember very vividly. I was in Gurgaon or Faridabad. I was like 7 years old or something, and my maternal grandfather was supposed to visit us, and those days, trains took around 48 to 51 hours to for people to come from Kochi to Delhi. And I was waiting for him, and I was very excited because that was the first time somebody from my family was visiting us in the north. Okay, but late in the night, I was sleeping, and we had this DD1, DD2, and my parents would watch. And they used to air movies on the weekends at 9:30,
Yes.
and my parents used to watch those movies. And I was sleeping in my room, and I was alone, and I saw somebody coming into the room, and I assumed it was my Nanaji, and I was very happy. I hugged him and I slept. But the next morning when I woke up, my mother was crying, and I asked her what happened and where is Nanaji? Because I assumed it was Nanaji who came into the room, and she said he passed away. So that kind of shook me. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I had imagined it, or maybe it was a way for somebody to communicate. But I really would like to keep that rational point of view alive. I was missing him, maybe, and I thought about him and I imagined him. Or maybe it was a dream. Who knows?
Wow. Wow. Your book Daiva dives into spirit worship in Tulunadu, right? So, what was the most unsettling thing you discovered during your research? Did any of it change, what you believe about life and what comes after?
So, Daiva, again, the word spirit worship, I don't know. I mean, it's an umbrella term, to be very honest. Daiva Aradhana, or the worship, or the Aradhana or worship of Daivas, it's pretty popular in the southern part of the country. It's even present in the northern parts, like in Uttarakhand, we've got Devatas and all these Pahari
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Devatas. Yeah, even if you, I mean, again, it's wrong to generalize this concept. Even if you go to eastern side, you've got Manasa, who is
Yeah, yeah.
again a form who's not your exactly a Puranic Devata, right? So similarly, we've got Daivas or Bhutas in South Canada, which is the Tulu-speaking region of Karnataka, coastal Karnataka.
Yes, yes.
Go further south in Kerala, you've got Theyyams,
Yeah. I've been for
right?
the Theyyam festival actually,
Yeah.
just this year.
Oh, okay.
During
Where in Kannur?
no, this was a little inside, and
Uh,
yeah, near Kannur.
near Kannur.
And near Kannur in one of the villages, and it was unbelievable as an experience, watching them paint their faces and the kind of weight that they carry around on their head. And I could not go for the fire one where they walk through fire, but I was there for the entire day that day, the Tayyam in Kerala in Tulunadu.
Agni Pravishnam is one of the most dangerous things
Yeah.
that actually happens during a Theyyam, and it's also see, at the end of the day, when a common man, you have to understand the caste equations as well. Although
Yes,
I'm not going to dive into that right now, but understand the caste equation as well. Somebody and take yourself at least 100 years back and think about a Theyyam or a Kola performance at that time when the society was completely uh, divided on the basis of
absolutely on card.
caste.
Yeah.
At that time, a man from an outcast community
Yes.
becomes, just applies some paint on his face and through possession and invocation, becomes a deity for all the
Yes.
people of the village. And then he
Yes.
solves the problems of the people. So I think that is somewhere very powerful.
It
If you look
was
at,
a very, very powerful experience for me, Ari. I sat there and I watched, it was done on the goddess,
hmm,
and I cannot get over it.
it's beautiful. There are many, many. I mean, there are Puranic gods and goddesses as well. There are also regional folk heroes or female deities, and it's just fascinating how folk tales. Because even if you look at Kola is almost similar to Theyyam. It's just
Yes.
a geographical
Yes.
and the language which is different, right?
Yeah.
And even there, you will notice that more than the colors or the miraculous feats that they perform, it's the faith of the people which is holding it together, which I think we
Agreed.
need to salute those people who have kept it alive.
100%. And the art that
Hmm.
is there, the kind of the way they create, make all of those things that the person wears, and does the entire act. I mean, the intricacy of it, I'm actually getting the goosebumps, Hari, when I'm talking to you. And it is, I think this was ordained that you and me were supposed to talk, because I've been wanting to go back again, and I've made friends with this amazing, woman there, who has
Hmm.
done a lot of research
Research.
on the,
Okay.
yeah, and
I'll I'll
yeah,
take a contact from you then. Because I'm
sure,
also doing some research on that. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm. No, I,
yeah,
I think, see, at the end of the day, if something, I mean, especially when these things are not written down.
yeah.
There's no academy which you can learn Kathakali from an academy, but these things are not taught anywhere. It's passed on from one generation to another. And I have been to kolas where I've seen little kids from the community who help their parents or their relatives, get ready, and they learn by looking at them.
Oh yes, oh yes.
And the Padanas, which are the folk poems that are
Mhm.
used in the you don't have mantras, okay? Like for other kinds of worship, you've got some kind of a mantra, mostly in
Yes.
Sanskrit. But here you've got Padanas in the Tulu language, and these are folk poems. And each and every word, it goes from one generation to another. And of course, with every generation, there is some variation according to based on the crowd who's gathered there. That's all there. And it is a subject of controversy, but that's how folk tales kind of, pass on. But it's
A lot of
amazing
people from
how
the
they've
upper
kept it
caste
alive.
don't go there. You know,
I think now a lot of things are changing.
yes, yes,
Yeah, see, the whole caste equation. That's why I said if we take this back by 100 years, the things would have been different.
yes, absolutely.
And the need of the hour is to remove that barrier so that
Absolutely.
the society becomes one.
Yeah.
There's no
Which
point
is
in
a
living
long,
a.
long process,
It's a
you
very
know.
long process, and
Yeah.
even if you do that, you might find a lot of resistance. So it's okay.
Amazing, amazing. So spirits like Panjurli and Satyadevta are worshipped, not feared, but in horror, the line between reverence and dread, can get very thin, right? So how do you tread that line without inviting something that, one can't control?
First of all, there's a beautiful line in the film The Batman, which came out a couple of years back, that fear is a tool. Okay, so fear is just a tool to bring some kind of a discipline in the society. I mean, if you
Mhm.
use it correctly, you can't, subject people to fear and get things done. Then that becomes a very bad example of
Yeah.
dictatorial. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying, right? So, but when it comes to these deities, even if when it comes to these deities, any deity, I'm not just talking about Panjali, even if it's a Puranic god, initially it's always fear. It's fear. अगर आपने, I mean, if you don't do this, then this god will get angry and this will happen,
Yes.
right? And eventually, as we grow, we start embracing that God. I mean, I know it sounds like Stockholm syndrome, but it's not Stockholm syndrome. But you start embracing that God, and when you connect with it, you find some kind of a love.
I've
right?
never
And
been fearful. I think there is,
see, again,
yeah,
that's an individual stack. Now look at it from the standpoint of a society. When a society in the beginning, like 100 years ago, if there was a new god or a new totem or whatever it is, it might have been feared, right? But eventually it was embraced and it become part of their lives. It becomes a god for or a deity. So when a person is born 10 years ago and the whole family is already worshipping that totem, then there is no fear. I mean, it's
yes,
a controversial thing to say, but you have to embrace that fear in order to
yeah.
see the
To look
beauty
beyond.
behind it. Yeah, look beyond.
To look beyond, absolutely. So let's talk about Mamta, your protagonist. She's just not running away from the supernatural, she's running from herself. So, how hard was it to write a character haunted by both the living and the dead? Did she ever take you somewhere where you personally, Hari, was not ready to go?
So, to be very honest, she came from exactly the place where I didn't want to go, but unfortunately, fate or destiny had placed me right there. And that's where Mamta sprouts from. So a few years back, so there are two incidents here. While I was writing India's Most Haunted, I was looking for haunted places in the country, and I had come across um, this act called Anti Prevention of Witch Hunt Act that
Mm.
was passed in Odisha.
Yes,
So yes, so I found out news reports and all those things during my research about how women from the lowest strata of the society
yes,
in the remotest villages, they are hunted
yeah,
down. They are labeled as
yeah.
witches. Yeah,
And they're
mostly
not even
widows.
allowed to become part of
Exactly.
mainstream society, which is
Exactly.
your heart breaks when you hear those stories for no fault of theirs.
And they're labeled
Oh.
as Dians, Dianies.
Yes, Dania.
So what is Diane? It's actually something
Yeah.
that's come from Dakini,
Yes, absolutely.
right? And Dakini, if you just dig a little deeper, Dakini is not a negative entity. Dakini is one of the, if you look at Hindu epics, Puranas, then Dakini is an attendant of Kali, of Durga. So
Yes,
she cannot be
absolutely.
negative, right? And even if
Absolutely.
you agree with me there, right? And even if you don't look at
Absolutely.
the Hindu or the Brahminical Puranas, you go to the Tibetan mythology. If you go there in Buddhism, again, Dakini is a very powerful entity. She is raw. She is vicious. She's covered in blood. She drinks from a cup of skull. Uh, but she is also untamed wisdom. That's the symbolism
Oh,
of
that's
the
such a
Dakini.
beautiful line, Hari. Untamed wisdom. My goodness, this will stay back with me from this podcast. Thank you so much. Please continue. Yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah.
just telling you what it
It's
is, and
beautiful, yeah.
I mean, it's not
Because
a word that I
there's
chose.
so much here that Ari is not discussed. And I saw this film actually, and it
Mm,
shook me about the women from Orissa who've been
mm.
banned and they're not part of mainstream society, and they're
They're
living in
not.
the
Mm.
forest, and they have to really fend for themselves. And this is like crime,
It is
you
time,
know?
and therefore there's an act. But even that act is not. I mean, there are loopholes, and people exploit that. And it's
Yeah.
not just Odisha. It's not just Odisha. It's there in Jharkhand. It's there in Rajasthan. Because one of my
Oh,
readers, who is
yes.
journalist, she told me that she had done a field story in Rajasthan about the very same incident. So, so that incident was there in my mind, and I wanted to write. And there is a story in India's Most Wanted, but it's a short story. And but this theme was always there in my head, and I wanted to write about it, but I wasn't finding my protagonist, Mamta. That's where the conversation, the question started. I wasn't finding Mamta. I wanted Mamta because somewhere I wanted that. See, for me, the Dakini is a mother. She's not a hot, objectified woman. She's a mother.
It's a
Look
beautiful
at her
name,
like
Mamta.
it's a beautiful, yeah. Therefore, I had Mamta in my mind, but I didn't have the character. I knew what she will do, but I didn't have that structure. Unfortunately, I mean, again, that's why I said it's an unfortunate incident which happened. We lost a baby, and I saw my wife in a very bad state in the hospital when we were losing the baby, and obviously, I mean, the physical pain and the mental pain that she went through, I mean, I can't even come close to that. But I saw Mamta there, I realized this is what it means. I mean, even now, I'm sure she has not really come out of it, but I know that this was my character, and that's how Mamta becomes this woman who has had a tragic miscarriage, which where she loses her baby, and now she comes to a village where another pregnant widow is being labeled as a Dakini, and she's being executed. Now she has to stop that. So that's how. I mean, that's the. I mean, you asked me about the internal and external fear. The external
Yeah.
fear is of a folklore, of a supernatural entity which Mamta doesn't believe in. Okay, because she's a rationalist. She was raised in Bombay in a convent as an orphan. She was an orphan, uh, and she's a journalist as well. At the same time, the internal fear, the real horror in her life, is of losing that baby that did not come out of a wedlock. So you're also balancing a lot of societal stigmas from an urban perspective as well as from a rural perspective. So I think that's where I think, and writing it was not easy because even I was reliving the whole uh, incident that night that we spent at the hospital again and again and again and again. So yeah, it was not an easy thing to write, but yeah, we I had to write it.
I'm so sorry, Hari.
It's see again, that's why I said it's fate. Sometimes some things happen because it leads to something else. And I hope the story of Mamta and the Dakini actually paves way for a lot of women to, not fear whatever is being imposed on them.
So let's just talk about the forest of Caliban and the village of Birpur. They feel alive, like breathing characters. So did you visit these places that gave you that chilling inspiration, or did these eerie, settings really grow out of your own nightmares?
Kali one, the word itself has darkness and one in it. And again, the actual meaning is not darkness, it's something else. I mean, somebody who is from Bengal would understand who is Kali. So now that you have an idea. But the visuals, it's a fictitious village. It doesn't really exist in reality. You can't find it on a map. It's set somewhere in the Terai region, and for me, I have been to these forests in the southern part of the country, in Maharashtra as well, in the Konkan region. So visually, those forests are where, I mean, those forests and those tropical trees are what inspired me to write Caliban, create Caliban. So when you go there, you have this indie Gothic feeling that you are in an Indian Adivasi village, and there's this huge forest where there are a lot of creepers, and there's a spirit roaming around looking for vengeance. And yes, that image from Vikram Vedal does help me.
For all of us, I think,
Yeah,
that even while we're talking to each other, we can just see, I'm sure so can you, of Betal on the shoulder with the,
soldiers.
all
Yeah,
gray hair and all almost ash and ash white.
yeah.
And yeah. So, some readers said that they tore through Dakini, in just 2 nights, unable to stop. What's the secret, and how did you build horror that creeps under the skin page by page and that refuses to go? And this is going to be for people who are inspired by this podcast and they want to write horror. Please share, spill the secrets.
I think, honestly, I don't think it's the horror. At least not in Dakini. It's the emotional content which kind of takes you forward. And I have this writing style where I begin with a very slow burn, unsettling incident, and then it's just incident after incident, which keeps you hooked till the end. I mean, that comes from writing web series. I've been part of a lot of writing teams for web series, so we have to write like that. So that technicality comes from there, but I think it's more than the horror. Horror will always be there. Those who want to find fascination in blood and gore, there are a lot of things in Dakini. Okay. But more than that, I think for people who want to read, who want to connect with Mamta and the Dakini, that emotional connect will work, is what I feel. At least this is what I feel from the feedback.
So you've also said that elevators break down whenever you step inside. That's like really scary. So do you ever feel like you're being warned, like the universe or something else is trying to keep you out of enclosed spaces for a reason? Tell me a little bit more.
I see. See, it's claustrophobia, okay, and claustrophobia. It's common. It's very common, but most of the people don't really realize it because the elevator it just closes and opens and people just come out. That's the reason why you see a lot of people feel like clicking the picture. There's a mirror in it so that you don't feel like you're in a confined space, right? But unfortunately, for some people, it might be very traumatic. So for me, I was stuck in an elevator for quite a long time, and when I
That's
came out of
creepy.
it, I was alone, and it was a very traumatic incident. After that, I tried to stay away from elevators for a long time, but then again, once again, I had to step inside one. Again, it got stuck, and then again, I stayed away from elevators, and finally, now, now, since you asked this question, uh, it was on the day of that. The day when we were about to lose our baby, when we went to that hospital in Pune, when I realized that the maternity ward is on the eighth floor. Okay, until then I was taking stairs because of the claustrophobia. That day I decided because my wife was really, she needed me beside her, I decided to step inside the elevator and I did. Now I'm talking about this for the first time in public. I stepped inside that elevator and on the way it also stopped for like 5 or 6 minutes. But because that day was so traumatic, I think that's the reason why I haven't been able to move. And I don't think it's because of some supernatural thing or anything, but it's because of it's a form of PTSD, maybe. I don't know. But coming back to another incident, when I was a kid, I had drowned in a water tank when I was 5 or 6 years old, and somebody had
And
picked me up. I just, no, I mean, we were like 5 or 6 kids and we were playing and we were sitting on top of this small water tank. It was not a big water tank, it was a small water tank. And I accidentally fell, backward and I fell inside the water. I remember falling down. I don't remember anything else, but then they saved me and everything. It could also be because of that. Because everything cannot be looked at with a supernatural perspective. You have to look at things from a very psychological perspective as well.
but I somewhere
Mm.
feel that, what? Why should
Mm.
we be guided by what is right and wrong? We can look at life the way we want to look at it, the way it guides us to
Definitely,
look at
definitely. See, what I'm saying is there's no conclusive answer to this.
And it's
Easiest and
okay
the
to not
most,
have a
yeah, the
conclusive
easiest,
answer.
even if you look at it that way, the day you start questioning about existence itself, you will feel claustrophobic. What are you doing
Absolutely.
on this earth? The day existential questions start
Yeah,
arising in the mind of any individual, and that can happen
absolutely.
at a stage when you're going through a lot of bad things, not when you're going through a lot of good things.
Good things very few people question, no? They just
Yeah,
accept it. And,
yes,
it's so funny that only when you have bad things in your life is when you start really looking at life in the way you should look at it when it's also good. Because nothing, it's all transient, nothing is going to last forever.
exactly.
Yeah. So I've also, I feel that a lot of people really scoff at horror, especially Indian horror, and some of them are not even made very, in the way, the horror is viewed from international films. Let's just talk about that. We can take an example of Shining as a film that stays on forever in my head. So what is the biggest myth you've heard about, Indian horror, and how do you break that myth, with your stories like cracking, a cursed miner?
You're talking about films, right? Specifically
Yeah, I'm
about
talking
films.
about films. Yeah.
So one thing which I've felt when it comes to Indian horror films. So when you look at The Shining, the film, I'm not talking about the
Yeah,
book
the
here.
film. Yeah,
Yeah, the book was a completely different ball game. The film, Stanley Kubrick, he is the master of his craft, and
absolutely.
he has used psychological horror.
Yes.
It's not The Shining. I mean, The Shining is the term that Stephen King has used for this thing.
Hmm.
In the book, there's a lot more shining and a lot more supernatural elements which he has used to scare the reader. But in the film, Kubrick goes with the psychological element.
Hmm.
You're stuck at Hotel Overlook, which is closed for the winters. It's all snow, snow, snow everywhere. There's nothing you can do.
Oh
It's just
God,
you.
yes.
You are reeling this thing.
With your
With
child.
with your child and you're an alcoholic, you have given up alcohol, now you are again, your anger issues, everything is coming out, and your wife is also struggling with that, and your child has a special capability to shine and communicate with the spirits. So for me, that's where it worked, that isolation, what isolation can do to a human being's mind.
Yes.
Right. And if you look at a lot of other good horror films, there are a lot of bad horror films in Hollywood as well. Not just Hollywood, even if you look at European
Everywhere.
film,
Yeah.
everywhere there are absolutely crap films in horror.
Yeah.
It's just the good ones that we watch. Okay. And unfortunately, when it comes to our Desi films in Hindi or the regional languages, it's mostly what they do is they depend on these tropes. They
Yeah.
don't build on the emotional content, they don't
Yeah.
build on the psychological content. They just look at some horror film in the West. This is awesome. Let's pick this scene. We want this scene here. And then you build up a story around that scene with a lot of goofy scares.
Yeah. Goofy scares, truly just the
Right?
right word. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens. But of course, there are good films. You've got Tumbbad, amazing
Yes.
film. You've got,
My God, yes. Tumbbad, yeah.
why does it work? Why does Tumbbad work? Because he has created a world where there is fear, fear not just from the entity, but also of what a human can become because of greed.
Yes.
So there's that emotional connect, and it's very basic. All of us are greedy for something, right? Someone can be greedy for fame, someone
Absolutely.
for money. So you have picked on it, and you've created a deity called Ashtar who actually feeds on it. I think that's what is needed, but unfortunately, that's not what we're getting. Even when you look at recent films, Three was an amazing film. It had a
Mhm.
message. But
Mhm.
again, what has come after that, I don't think so. Again, you've fallen into those goofy tropes.
Yeah, yeah, truly, truly. So, from India's most haunted to Dakhma to Dakini, there's one thread that never lets go, female spirits. Is horror your way of giving voice to women, who have been silenced and perhaps still are not resting because of certain, things that they've gone through in their lives?
So, like I said, Dakini had two inspirations for me. One was the witch hunt, and then what happened to us. Similarly, Dakhma again is a female-oriented subject, and that again was inspired by somebody I knew pretty well and who faced a lot of marital isolation in the 30 years of a marriage.
What do you mean by that? I would love to delve a little bit more on marital isolation.
Marital isolation is when you're married to somebody, and it could gender is not the issue. It could even be faced by the male there. Okay, but Dakma, since it's a woman who's facing it, therefore I'm talking about it. But marital isolation is when you're married, but you're actually isolated in the marriage. It can be physical, it can be emotional, it's very subjective. That marital isolation itself is a very broad term. So with Dakma, it was more of that emotional isolation, which my character was facing. Anahita is her name, Anahita Anand. She's married to this hotshot corporate guy who has a lot of ambitions. But unfortunately, Anahita, who has a lot of anxiety issues, who wants a baby, who wants to, have a more intimate married life, but the husband is an exact opposite. He has no time for that. And he also doesn't like the anxiety issues. And there's a phobia that Anahita has, and which is genophobia, not genophobia, which is your this thing. He has an anxiety when it comes to getting intimate with somebody. So she doesn't have physical relationships with her husband. There, that isolation starts because the husband wanted that, he doesn't get that. He moves on and he's completely um, immerses himself into his ambitious corporate ambitions, and there's this divide and there's this isolation. And I have explored it from Anahita's point of view, not from because my story is about Anahita, unfortunately. So that's
We aren't
what
complaining.
I'm sorry, what?
I said we aren't complaining at all.
Okay, no, I,
We
I
look
just
at it
mentioned
from the
that because
female perspective.
yeah, because that story is from her perspective, and so that's how Dakhma happened. So again, it was something which I heard from somebody whom I knew for a long time that she was living like that, and I was very shocked. And I've heard similar things from a few friends of mine who have been married for some time. And again, I mean, obviously not the phobia part, but the isolation part. So that inspired me to create this character called Anahita, and that is Dakhma. And if you look at other stories, other side of her, which became Brahm, it was again about a woman who chose to marry somebody who was younger than her, and then she loses him in a very brutal accident. So then what? What happens after that? There's no blood-sucking vampire or churels in any of my stories until Dakini, to be very honest. Usually, see, that's the problem. When we say horror, the first thing that people label me, now that I've got a lot of readers who have read my works, in the beginning, they always thought that I was writing about Bhoot, Preta, and churels.
Hmm.
But no, it's not. Horror is much beyond that. In
Yeah.
Dakhma, when you read it, the horror is not about uh, the bhoot at all. It's about this woman's existence, and it's also about an environmental crisis that was looming large in society. So yeah.
So you have to tell our listeners, your book got adapted into the TV series Brahm. So how did the
Hmm.
project get commissioned? I mean, I'm sure so many of our authors who follow us, they would love to get tips from you as to how they can go about this.
So it's a very, very, very tedious and long process. It's not at all easy. And with other side of we started pitching it. In fact, we had started pitching it even before I wrote the book.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was working with my so I was work I am still working as a as an assistant director, and at that time I was with Mr. Sangeet Sivan, who had also produced and directed the series. And I had this idea, and he also had a very similar idea, and we clubbed it together and we started working on the story. And in the beginning, it was conceived as a film, as a South Indian film. Okay, and a Malayalam film, to be very honest. And but we didn't find any takers because it was a female-oriented film. Budgets are
Mm.
extremely low. A lot of producers fear, oh God, if I invest it, who will watch it in theaters? Those kind of things. And then eventually we dropped it. And then I said, why should I waste a story? I'll just write a book. And I wrote a book. And after I wrote a book, it so happened that Sangeetji was like pitching. The OTT boom had started at that time, and we decided we'll turn it into a web series and start pitching it.
Mm.
So now the technical thing is to pitch something, you need to have pitch deck. So
Yeah.
who all are there, authors who are listening to this, who do not know how the industry works, you need a pitch deck. And it's a 30 slide document which contains uh, everything about your vision in a nutshell. So it's got the
Okay.
story, it's got the characters, it's got the world that you've built. Okay, and treatment, you don't have to go into treatment unless you are planning to direct it. Okay, treatment notes are different from a pitch deck. Usually, they people mix it up. So you need that, and if it's a web series that you're looking at, then you also need a show bible. Show Bible is a Mota wala document where you have broken down into different episodes, and this is what's going to
Yeah.
happen in this episode. This. Your hook points and everything need to be highlighted. You have to be prepared with this. If you don't have it, then better not waste your time or expectations, right? So if you have written a book, this is for your authors, okay? If you have written a book and you plan to pitch it as a web series, then keep these things ready. And if you can't make it, get professional help. There are people who make it for you, but of course, you'll have to pay them. And once you start pitching it, it's a long, long process. You keep pitching, you'll get a meeting, you tell them the idea, this is it, then you wait for the next call. And that's exactly what happened with Brahm. And eventually, Z5 picked it up. They liked the idea, they liked the concept. And although originally the book is set in South India, because like I said, it started as a Malayalam film, right? Uh, they felt that it should be a Hindi, since it's a Hindi language film series we're looking at, it should be set in North India. So that's how we reset the whole story and set it in Himachal Pradesh in Shimla. And yeah, rest, it just happened. It took almost a year and a half for the entire process to finish. So that's the kind of involvement you will have once you are a screenwriter, right? Once you're associated as a creator in the project. If you don't want to be associated like that, then you just write the book and give it away to somebody who will represent you.
So, we live in a world that really worships logic, right? So, in your stories and maybe in your life too, logic doesn't always win, right? What do you want to leave as a message to the skeptics, the ones who often laugh at spirits, spirit possessions or folk rituals? And I know a lot of people who laugh at that. And so, have you ever, seen something you wish that they had seen too?
No,
What would you like to tell them?
no, I'd rather say if you don't believe in it, do not believe in it. If you're skeptical, be that because it's very, very, it's a correct standpoint. Because there are a lot of, see, I shouldn't be saying this, and this is an answer that people don't expect from me, but I always give this answer because when you start believing in things which doesn't have a basis, then there are a lot of elements which will try to fool you as well. So that scientific temperament is very important. It's very easy for somebody to come and say, "Oh, I saw this in a dream and this is going to happen there." Don't believe in it. If you have a good logical mind, trust that. I know I just contradicted everything I said in this podcast.
No, you did contradict. I think you're being very, very, you're being inclusive of people who are skeptics because, like I said, that everybody has their own viewpoint to life. And
Exactly. And
yes, and I have
and
seen things too as a young girl. I grew up in the Northeast in Shillong, and I have seen a very, very old lady who used to live near,
hmm,
a place where they burnt the dead, and she used to do things on the ground, with cowries, those
hmm,
shells, and
shells,
she could.
yeah, huh.
Yeah, and she would solve a lot of the local people's problems if, their hen got stolen or something. She knew which home that or which person had taken it, and she did live near the near the Shamshan all her life alone. A
See, there's no
bent
fear
old
there.
lady.
There's no
So
fear there.
there is no fear there.
So that's what when I
And in a place
said,
like Shillong, sorry, Hari, I'm interrupting you. In a place like Shillong, where the time I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, like,
hmm,
it would be pitch dark. There won't be any sound around you.
right.
This is not a city, it's a small hill station.
Hill station, right? See, that's what I said. There are incidents in your life, okay? And this,
Yeah.
I've mentioned this in my book, Daiva, because you also asked me, what did you take from Daiva? What was your experience? What did you learn from Daiva? I learned a lot, and one thing which I really would like to say here is there's always some incident or incidents that happen in your life which make you question everything around you. And that incident can A, turn a believer into a non-believer,
Yeah.
or a non-believer into a believer.
Yeah.
It can work either ways. Yeah, that's all I
Thank you
wanted to
so
say.
much,
Yeah,
Hari.
yeah.
This was a really riveting podcast. I really enjoyed myself, and thank you so much for taking out the time and being here with us. And we want to read more stories from you and wish you all the best. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, stories, I don't know, but mostly it will be works of non-fiction exploring regional mythology and folklore in the coming years. So yeah, but those are also stories that were passed on from the older generations, and somewhere now it's lost because of urbanization, and there's no time for parents to devote to kids, or because parents families are living away from their grandparents, you can say.
How sad.
Yeah,
How sad. Because
yeah.
so much of our imagination is built, from hearing those stories.
Hearing those stories, yeah,
And you stick to your cousins and in your in the family home when you go, when you've heard those stories, and you tease each other also with all of that. And
yeah.
I personally feel very sad, when I see that whole part of bonding, family bonding, that is slowly coming to an end.
Coming to an end. At
Yeah.
least the story should survive, and that's what I'm trying
Yes,
to do.
the
Yeah,
stories must survive.
yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Thank you so much for having me on the
Yeah,
podcast. It was,
thanks.
yeah.